So I kept hearing about this book from other books that I was reading. Love is letting go of fear. And I have to admit, the first time I read it or heard it, it was kind of annoying. It was kind of cliche. Like that saying, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Because I think things are infinitely more complex than that. Or, maybe they're not. Maybe they're not that complex. But I kept hearing this book over and over again. And so finally what I did is I downloaded the audiobook, because it's just so hard to read. I try to read every day, but when I really want to dive into a book, I not only read it, I'll get the audiobook so I can listen to it over and over again. So I get the audiobook, and sure enough, it's the book is being narrated by the author, and the author is Dr. Gerald Jampolsky, and he's a doctor from out in California. But this is the thing: this book was written in the 70s, so they must have recorded the audiobook then for cassette, because the music that goes along with the book is hysterical. You have to listen to it for yourself. So now I probably listened to this book, I don't know, man, between 5 and 10 times. And he's right about one thing. In the state of love, which is not an emotion, the state of love, true state of love, is a way of being. In that state, it's impossible for fear to be present. Now, if you love something, it's not uncommon for the polar opposite to arise up within you, which is fear. So I love my son, I love my daughter, I love my wife, and sometimes when I'm experiencing the love I have for them, fear will come up right afterwards, because it's diametrically opposed to love. Now, I believe that love is forever. God forbid something happened to them. It doesn't mean I'm not going to love them anymore. And the thing is this, is love is an emotion, because if you truly love something or someone, if that thing or that person is no longer in your life, you still love them. Love is forever. It doesn't stop. It's not subject to emotional whims. And it's interesting. So I had this really interesting thing happen to me today. So I went out to this property to work with this horse. And I get there, and it's a beautiful property, beautiful house, and there's some construction being done on it. And the woman I was supposed to meet there, I saw some horses, but I didn't see her. So I figured I'd go up to the house to see if maybe she was in there. And I went up to one of the guys working construction, and I asked if he knew her, and he said no. And then all of a sudden, this really nice car pulled up, like brand new car, man, just gorgeous car. And I'm always tentative, because a lot of the properties I go out to work with horses are rural, and sometimes my GPS will bring me to the wrong property. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes people are like, "Hey, man, what are you doing on my property?" And it could be a little daunting. And so I'm feeling, I guess, a little fear, right? So this guy gets out of the car, and he's like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And he's dressed in a really nice suit. And it dawned on this guy was so friendly. He wasn't like, "What are you doing on my property?" He got out of his car and greeted me like I was a long lost friend. And it dawned on me, I was like, there is not an ounce of fear in this guy. And I ended up talking to this guy for about a half an hour. The woman I was supposed to meet was out actually riding her horse. We got the times mixed up. So it was really amazing, because I got to talk to this guy for about a half an hour. And the conversation was so incredibly enjoyable, because this guy, he just had, he had love. He was devoid of fear. We were talking about all sorts of stuff. And he was laughing, and his state, it picked me up. It picked me up, which it's interesting that I'm doing the podcast about this book, because I guess I needed that experience to really hammer it home. Because when I was talking to this guy, I said to myself, this is success. This is what success is. This state of being. I bet this guy just attracts massive success into his life. I didn't even ask him what he does for a living. He obviously does quite well for himself. But I learned something today. I learned something about today. This guy was just like, "Hey, how you doing?" It was awesome, man. It just opened me up, and I want to be more like that. I don't want to be so aggressive and fearful. I mean, come on, man. Like, how aggressive do I have to be? Do I have to be aggressive and fearful to protect my family? I don't think so. I think that fear is weak. I think love is powerful. I think your family's more protected when you're in a state of love than when you're in a state of fear. And after all, what is aggression? I mean, anger just covers up the fear. I think that anger is a cover-up for fear. And I'll talk about that more when I review a book called Power versus Force. But this book, Love is Letting Go of Fear. So this guy, he was a really successful doctor. The author of the book I'm talking about, Dr. Gerald Jampolsky. I'm looking over at my German Shepherd right now, Bo, who's like the best dog. And we just got another livestock dog, she's just so sweet, this dog. And sorry for the little tangent there. The author, Dr. Gerald Jampolsky, he attained everything of success in the eyes of the world, right? He had the big house, right? And he had the car. He was married with kids. He had tons of money. And he hit a wall. He got depressed. He ended up in divorce. He became an alcoholic. He had chronic back pain. This guy was a mess, and he was struggling. And someone said to him, "Hey Jerry, hey Dr. Jampolsky, why don't you read this book? It's called A Course in Miracles." And at the time, A Course in Miracles, I don't think it was printed yet. It was just, like a copy, like a bunch of papers photocopied. And, he was adamantly opposed. He's like, "What's it about?" And the person was like, "Well, it's spiritual." And he was like, "No." It's kind of funny how we're like so adamantly opposed at first to the things that are probably the most helpful to us. But he wasn't a spiritual guy. He was actually an atheist, I believe. And, A Course in Miracles is a course. I did A Course in Miracles. It's one lesson a day for 365 days. And what the course is really on is forgiveness. It's a course about forgiveness. And the thing is that you have to know what forgiveness is. And I struggled with that for a long time. I still struggle with it. But I like how Dr. Jampolsky talks about forgiveness. He says that, forgiveness means that you never hurt me. No matter what you did to me, you never hurt me. And I don't resent you. I don't condone your behavior, but you're no sweat off my back. And it's obvious then that forgiveness is actually more for the person forgiving than it is for the person being forgiven. And have you ever heard that saying, "To err is human, to forgive is divine"? Man, truer words were never spoken. Because from my experience, maybe I could explain it to you better this way. I have a cousin, and she was holding a resentment, and she prayed and she prayed about it. And she asked God, I'm not kidding you. This is, and she's not like a nut. She's a wife. She's a mother, incredibly successful family. I mean, we grew up like brother and sister. I love her to death. She's amazing. my cousin Lisa, and she told me a story of where she prayed, and she asked God to take this resentment from her. And she goes, Maddie, I couldn't do it myself. And she said the Holy Spirit came and it took her from her. To err is human, to forgive is divine. Because, man, to really forgive, to really let go, to really forgive and not hold any resentment. Man, I still have resentments from like when I was a teenager. It's kind of silly. I laugh at them when they come up. So maybe that's some semblance of progress. But she has no resentment, and she's the real deal, dude. She has no resentment. To err is human, to forgive is divine, because it's almost like a divine intervention. And the thing I love about divinity is that, divinity is all by choice. Divinity isn't a dictatorship. You know what I mean? Divinity isn't do this or else. It's you choose. You choose. You choose what you want. You want a savior? No one's forcing you to do it. You choose Jesus. And that I think, most people don't for me, I've come to understand, why humanity is so in need of a savior. Besides like the fact that if you like look around, go ahead, walk through a city, walk through some neighborhoods in a city, walk through some parts of the world. I've traveled to 24 different countries in the world, man. This earth, whatever it is, it could be a rough place. And there's pockets of light and there's pockets of darkness. And man, I'm grateful and look to those who follow the light, and I pray for those who fall into darkness. Because, man, to fall into darkness is such a tragedy. It's such a tragedy. And maybe our life as who we are for this life incarnation has some sort of obligations that come with it and things that you have to experience. I think about that, not growing up with any parents and going through what I went through as a child, and other things I've gone through in my life. But suffering taken on voluntarily is alchemical. It's transformative. When you take it on voluntarily, you could fight with your life all you want, or you could just surrender to it. But man, don't let your suffering go to waste. Use it to go to another level. Use it to go to another level. And I've done that. And man, I know I have a long way to go, but I'm a different human being than I was years ago. Many incarnations I think I've gone through, and that's a consequence of striving for the knowledge and the wisdom, and then actually putting the actions and putting in the work and the effort to do what is required of me to go to the next level. And it's not acquisition, it's actually more of on a level of surrender. And books like Love is Letting Go of Fear are tremendous gifts, because they help you. They're teaching you, they're giving you the steps, they're giving you the knowledge, they're giving you the playbook. I had a mentor, and I talk about him a lot. We're going to review some of his books, but he said, all disease begins in the mind. And I believe that. I've been a doctor for over 20 years, and I've worked with a lot of people, and I see how the state of being, or the level of consciousness, however you want to put it, and the correlating emotions and the thoughts and the stories that we all live through correlates with either health or sickness, well-being or disease. Maybe not a causation, but definitely a correlation, without a doubt. Love is Letting Go of Fear is a must read for anyone who's concerned with spiritual growth. That's it. And I think all problems are spiritual problems. I think all answers are spiritual answers. Think about this for a second, okay? Think about this for a second. If I asked you who you were, maybe you would tell me your name, right? You would say, oh, I'm so-and-so. And I would say to you, no. It's not who you are. That's your name. And then maybe you'd say, well, I'm a man or a woman. I'd say, no. That's not who you are. That's just your sexual orientation. And maybe you say, well, I'm an American. No. That's just the country that you're a citizen of. And eventually you would come to a place where you'd be like, well, I don't know who I am. That's right. That's wisdom right there. And then I'd say to you, where are you? And you'd say, well, I'm sitting here with you on your farm. I said, no. The farm, where's the farm? And I said, oh, the farm is in Virginia. I said, where's Virginia? It's in the United States. Where's the United States? It's in North America. Where's North America? In the world. Where's the world? In the universe. Where's the universe? So here we are. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we are. We are literally the definition of a lost soul. And so I ask you, do you really think you don't need a savior? You don't know where you came from. You don't know where you're going. You don't know who you are or where you are. You do your best to build a life which is completely temporary. All life will end in tragedy. Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's true. Everything you love, everyone you love, it'll all come to, it's this dimension, this whatever this is, it's all going to come to an end. And yeah, this shouldn't be avoided. This should be contemplated. You need to feel, I don't like to say you don't need to do anything, but from my experience, I allow myself to feel these things and experience these things because, if you put these things off, man, let me tell you, when the time comes that these catastrophes happen, you're going to get wiped out. It's almost like you need to train yourself to be able to look at your thoughts, ask if they're true, and then rewrite them. And also to be allowed to experience the sensations coursing through you and know that they're going to pass. They're all going to pass. My best friend, he lived in India for years. And when he came back, man, he was like very different. And I really picked his brain. And, he said it was many experiences, but he said, a big thing that I did when I was in India is I did this thing called Vipassana Meditation, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It's no nonsense, no bull crap, no flowing robes and beads and dreadlocked hair. No, nothing like that. You go there, you take the vow of silence, you practice meditation for 10 to 11 hours a day. If you have a question about the technique, you could ask the teacher, or if things are coming up, you could talk to the teacher about it. But other than that, you're completely within yourself. And man, in 2005, I reached one of those points that I call like the epics, these points. The Buddhist monks would build these things on mountains as a symbol to certain points in their life. But I have these points in my life too. These epics, these points that I come to where I was at the end of my rope and I needed to grow, I needed to develop, I needed to do something. So in 2005, I did my first Vipassana meditation retreat. And man, let me tell you, this is not, I don't want to say too much about it. I'm going to put a link in the description so you could check it out yourself. But once again, I don't try to get people to meditate. I believe if you're called to meditate, you can't avoid it. I don't think you could avoid your destiny. I think if you try to avoid your destiny, you will close life off to you. That call to adventure. I'm working on an essay. I'm writing an essay. It's called Why Denying the Call to Adventure Will Lead to Catastrophe and Then Transformation. Because at some point, you could accept the catastrophe and you could close the windows in your house and lock them up and lock your doors and hide in your house and watch TV all day and never engage in life. And you have to ask the question there, what's stopping you from bearing your cross? Is it not fear? Well then, think about this. What would happen if you replace that fear with love? Do you think your choices would be different then? Because man, I think someone that's in a state of love has the heart of a lion, has the courage to take on whatever shows at their doorstep. And you know, courage isn't devoid of fear. Courage is the acknowledgement of fear and still moving forward through it. And I remember all the wrestling matches I had, hundreds. There was only 2 that I remember that I didn't feel fear before I stepped out on the mat. And you know what? What was I scared of? I was scared to lose. Why was I scared to lose? You know why I was scared to lose? I was scared to lose because I felt like if I lost, I would have lost the love of my wrestling coaches, that I was going to let them down. And oh man, I am so grateful to my 2 wrestling coaches. They've done so much to me. I'm going to name them Nick DiDomenico and Frank Torres. And later on in my life, man, I wish I listened to Frank when I was a kid. He was a gift from God, and I didn't listen to him. But you know what? Later on in life, I got to apologize to him, and I got to be close to him later on in life. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for the sport of wrestling, because man, I was able to, you know, be great, even if it was for a few minutes on a wrestling mat as a teenager. That, man, that is priceless. So look, I'll leave you with this. Check this book out. I don't get anything from you guys reading this book. I just love to talk about the books that I've read that mean something to me. But man, my life was rough starting out. And I can relate to the suffering of other human beings. That's why I became a doctor. That's why I became a chiropractor. Because I can relate to suffering. I know what pain is. And maybe in a way, I hope that some people, you get something out of these things. Maybe something I say, maybe something comes through me and it hits your heart, and you can go to another level. So love is letting go of fear. Dr. Gerald Jampolsky. And I'll leave a link in the description for the Vipassana Meditation retreats. And if I find a link to the book A Course in Miracles, I'll go ahead and I'll put that in there too.